If you're wondering whatever happened to the Up on Smoke tour or Up in Smoke, whatever they want to call it, don't worry. It's in Indianapolis every late February into March because there's a lot of smoke at the Combine. A lot of talking, a lot of conversations. The big conversation is starting at the top of the draft. What the hell are the Chicago Bears going to do with Justin Fields as their quarterback now, the number 1 overall pick? Which direction are they going? A couple of days ago, it was Peter King who said, the way the wind's blowing, it feels like the Bears are going to keep Justin Fields and then trade away that to try and come up with a draft haul that's going to feed them for the next 2 years.
He doesn't know.
Yeah, well, that's it's Peter King.
Dang.
You know?
Yeah, I know, but that's part of the issue. It's part of what's happened over the course of the last decade or so.
Dang.
I'm just saying. It became more of a speculative reporting and writing anymore.
Well, what was funny about it is his wording was the way the wind's blowing, and then that became the headline that everybody ran with. You know,
which means the wind could change directions at any moment.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. He's like that. Who are the people who they tell you the fortune, right? Like they come in like, well, you were born. You were born in a hospital. Yes, I was.
Wait.
Oh, yeah.
You were born in a hospital.
You got it.
And it was dark outside, but not too dark.
Oh, my
gosh. A little bit light, too.
You know me so well.
Yeah.
How did you know that?
Your mother was crying.
No.
You were born on a day that ends in Y. And they're like, yes, that's correct. That's essentially what Peter King became at the end. Can we talk about this, though? Because I personally feel like the Combine is one of the most interesting, unique events, essentially a job interview, that people go through. And I know we probably do this every year, but I don't know. I mean, VAR, when you went, how do you feel going to it? Who was your roommate? Did you have a roommate?
Man, Q, I don't remember. I want to say I had a roommate. But I was sick. I got sick. I got really sick, almost flu-like sick when I was there. So it wasn't the best of experiences for me. But it was, I just remember it being pretty grueling in terms of the amount of time you had to spend doing everything that was on the agenda during the course of the day. I do remember that. There was not very much time to get rest.
Yeah.
I remember that. So.
I feel like they've changed this thing now to where it's it's a made-for-TV event. So all the stuff that you want to see is in prime time. And, a lot of it's obviously done in real time. They're not taping it and then playing it back for the most part. And I think because they don't want some of the numbers and some of the stuff to get leaked out. But that's part of the biggest change, I think, to me. And I think in them pushing everything into prime time, it's actually allowed the players to have a little more power in what they choose to do and not do. I mean, one of the more recent things is we're seeing that Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake, but none of those guys are throwing. Drake May from North Carolina. And those are, presumed to be the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft class. But, it's in part because of, what this has become. It's not really for the players anymore. It was always for medical. It was always for interviews. And then they tried to make it into this baseline testing with the 40 and the vertical and the broad jump and the 5-10-5, 3-cone, all these different ways of looking at the players and comparing them to one another. But the reality is that doesn't necessarily play to the strengths of the player. That's not football. And so for a lot of these guys who are at the top of their class in it, they're like, yeah, if I'm going to run a 40 once in my life and this is going to be the 40 that everyone remembers, I'd rather do it my pro day. I'm not going to do it at the Combine. I'm going to give myself more time to test so I can get that best number. Because I'm sure, as you know, LaVar, and any free agent, all those numbers stick with you. Mm-hmm. You don't leave them behind you. Or they're not like, oh, he was a rookie then. They still look at him as oh, that guy ran a 4.4. That's how people talk about you. So I just think it's kind of interesting. This is a huge moment for these young men who are in Indianapolis right now. And they're being watched, picked, prodded, everything they do for the next few days. It is the most crazy, I guess you'd say intense job interview that they'll probably ever go through.
When the most important stuff was everything they did on the field. during the year and everything they've done over the past.
Well, and I think the greater point too is, for people who are bothered by these guys like Caleb Williams, Drake May, I don't think Marvin Harrison is performing at the combine. He'll go, but he won't be doing anything. How do you blame them? You have head coaches who aren't going. Like, if the guys who you're ultimately playing for aren't going to be there either, aren't they kind of sending you the message, like Sean McVay and Robert Saleh, and I don't know if Shanahan's going to be there, and like, aren't they kind of sending you the message that, like, how really important is it outside of medical and interviews if the guys who could be part of that making that decision and who are going to be coaching you aren't there either?
And you're going to see them at some point. Like those coaches that aren't there, if that prospect is someone that they're planning on hiring, they're going to see them several times during the course of that time. They'll bring them into the facility. They'll go to their pro days. Like, that's when like, you show up, all right, such and such pro day. The coaches that you see there, like the head coaches that you see there, they're probably genuinely interested in getting that prospect. That's how you know. I mean, the combine, I don't want to speak for coaches and GMs and stuff like that, because I've never been in that role. But I mean, it just seemed like the few times that I covered it as an analyst and was there, it definitely was guys catching up and doing their normal this time of the year thing, comparing notes. It's almost more so just as much about the interaction and the networking between GMs, front office guys, scouts, coaches, and stuff like that. It almost makes you think, if you were privy to it, guys are interviewing for jobs during combine, and not the players, not just the players, right? There's like other elements involved of people politicking and trying to improve their standing or their position, or setting something up for the future. Like, I may be available next year. Ha 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 ha. Like,
what about Eric Bieniemy? What?
Dang. I took a lot of heat for that segment.
What segment?
Our segment on talking about the market has spoken on how you guys was talking about Eric Bieniemy can't get a job.
What do you mean?
I took a lot of heat for y'all saying that.
You're the one that came out and said the market has spoken. That was your words.
I thought that was y'all.
I was more hung up on his email and just what he thought of himself in his email. That was more what
See,
grabbed
I knew
me.
it was you guys. You guys were.
No, I just gave you the stats of when he was an OC back at Colorado, which did not go well. I digress. As you try to share. Here's the thing: is you're the one who was standing on. You got to stand on it, right?
You got to stand on it.
You got to stand on it. Stand on your business.
No,
man.
I stand on it. I stand on it. I'm pretty accurate.
Yeah,
I stand on it.
That threw me off. I was gonna go a different direction, but
yeah.
The other thing about the combine is there is a lot of business. This is like the national convention for the NFL. That's the other thing I don't think a lot of people know. If you're an athletic trainer, if you are a chiropractor, if you are a agent, or there's some financial advisors, helmet companies, Rydell, Vices, all these, like if you have some sort of technology or something, they all are there right now. If you look at what goes on outside of just the combine, it is like anyone who's a part of the football world in some capacity, insurance, all that stuff, they're all there. If for some reason they've created this event this time, and maybe it's because it's after the Super Bowl and teams aren't worried about the games as much and all that, but this is the time when they're all meeting. Like, you walk into any conference room that's in Indianapolis, you will find a different group meeting talking about their plans for the NFL, for whatever that may be. It could be turf, the turf specialist and all that. Like, it is that big of an event outside of just what's happening on the field and the interview rooms for the players. To your point, LaVar, like, it really is a huge event, but it's bigger than people realize because that stuff doesn't get televised. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember walking around and past different hotels, seeing different conventions, different groups. Like, it is a huge time of year for Indianapolis. So I guess to Jonas's point too about helping out those bartenders.
Well, I was going to say, then this is probably the event that we would most likely be able to actually get a guest when our show starts, because they're probably still walking around. I mean, Vegas, there was no chance.
I used to think we would 100% would have had a shot back in the old schedule because they had the players up so early and they were testing, they were doing stuff like earlier in the day.
Potty test.
Now it might be a little different because they're doing more stuff in prime time, but I still think they're up early.
God, it's fun, man.